Alright, so we're going to start here with our two different size pieces. Remember, one of these is a 10 by 10 tube and the other is a 10 by 6 tube. And all I'm doing here is taking a calipers and setting it as close as you can get to 10. So then you're going to spin this little dial here on the top to lock it in place so it doesn't move. And then I'm just going to use this to make marks on my cardstock. So the easiest way to do this for single setups is to just kind of measure and make a mark with a pen. When you get into making a lot of these, it may be useful to make a template for this or some other system that you could use to make it more efficient. Okay, but right here I'm doing the four sides of the 10 by 10, and then notice I have a little bit left over, and that's going to be the tab that I use to glue these together. Okay, so then I'm just going to take my straight edge here, line both of those dots up, and then I'm going to take the back of my razor blade, okay, so the non-sharp end, and I'm not going to press super hard because you don't want to cut through the material, but it's just enough to leave a line there. So you notice how very little pressure I'm using. But what this allows you to do when you go to fold this into a tube is there's just a tiny little score mark that kind of guides your fold so that you get a really straight fold. Okay, so make sure you're not using the sharp side. You want to use that side. Now, that being said, when the sharp side is facing up, the blade is more dangerous. Okay, so cutting away from yourself is an option if that's comfortable for you, but just be really careful that you're not pushing super hard so that you don't slip. Hopefully you can see this on the camera here, but you can see there's just a little bit of a score mark there that you can use to fold. Now, these triangle shaped rulers work really well for this, but essentially you can either go under like this and fold up, or you can bend it over the top, whatever you find works best for you. Okay, so kind of line up both pieces of the end there with the score on it and then fold it over, and then you just work through folding over the other four folds lined up on each side. And the side that is scored is the one that should be facing you, that you're folding outwards. Now what I like to do at this point, put away the sharp things, and then make sure that you get a really good crisp fold. So one of the ways you can use the ruler, you can use one of our little credit card shaped vinyl applicators. When you do a lot of these with your fingers, they start to hurt, so it's a good idea to use this. And notice how I'm kind of folding it over on itself, and then I go to the other side so I don't have so many folds. And this just gets you a nice crisp edge. So The more crisp this edge is, the better strength profile you're going to have on your tube, because you don't have any weak imperfection points on your fold that could start a point of compression failure. And you notice how there's this little tab left in there, but it's a little bit shorter than the 10 millimeters. Okay, so when you put it together, there's enough room for that flap to kind of close down but not run into the other side. Otherwise you get kind of a sideways tube. Then what you can do is grab yourself a couple of these little acrylic pieces, and that will help us push down on the glue. So the key with this is to not use too much glue, and you want to spread it out evenly on the surface. So grab a brush, and essentially you want to let it dry just a little bit, but not too much. So when it's tacky with the wood glue with a really thin coat, it literally takes like 15 to 20 seconds before it starts to get tacky. Okay, and then you just fold that tab in on itself, and then you kind of need to get a little bit of pressure in there to get the glue joint good. So you can push down on it, but kind of collapses it. So what we do is we take these acrylic pieces, you kind of slide them in there, okay, and then you get it positioned where you want it, and then you can flip it over and push it down on the table. Now if you use too much glue, then what happens is you end up gluing the acrylic piece to your tube, which you don't want to do. So just a little bit of glue, a little bit of pressure. Notice this is only about 15-20 seconds of pressure, and it's enough to kind of solidify that joint and get a really good bond between the two pieces of paper. Okay, another way you can do this, if you're doing a lot of them, you can take two pieces of acrylic like this and kind of sandwich it, and then put some tape on the ends, kind of wrap it around, and it'll hold it in place. But if you're doing a lot of these, it's better to just kind of use the acrylic to press it tight, and then you can grab a little piece of masking tape and just use that to hold the glue joint in place until it permanently dries so it doesn't come detached. And I always leave a little end hanging off so that you have something to pull on to get the tape off afterwards. And then you can just kind of let those sit there. Okay, so you can kind of see down the tube there. Mine's a little bit longer on one side than the other. Okay, but this is part of the manufacturing process. So you can kind of squish it down a little bit, but the glue takes hold pretty quick. And that's one tube done. And the same process for the 10x6, except you're going to have a more rectangular shaped tube instead of a square tube. Alright, so here is our little testing device. I just want to kind of show you how these parts go in here. So take the tape off, and in this case this tube is a little bit longer than the middle, and so what you want to do is rest that tube so that the lever is roughly parallel to the table, and that will give you the most accurate results for your compression testing. Okay, so on this side you're going to add mass to the right hand side, and when you get enough, then your part's going to fail, okay, just like it did here. Okay, so here on the flip side, same process, except you're going to clamp your bar in place for tension on the top and the bottom, and then you're going to add mass to the lever end and measure how much it takes to break your bar. Now sometimes the manila folders are kind of slippery, so when you put tension on, if the clamps aren't positioned perfectly, you end up with a situation like this where they start to slip out. So this is where this part of the design comes in handy. You want to glue these little tabs on the end of your bars, which helps them have more grabbing power on the clamps. So back to our model here. Sometimes if you pop these little plastic pieces off, tends to help you get a little bit more pressure so that you can get a good clamp on there. And then again, you're going to be adding pressure from the other end until your bar breaks like this. And then you're going to record that data.